to my backyard and to the fourth clip dedicated to light. Today we're going to take care of the position of the drawing force inside our heads. Do you remember the drawing force? Did you experiment with the spoon and the stream of water for 1,000 times? And if you did you ever think that the water was protecting the spoon? Probably not. If someone told you that when you experiment, it is really what happens, would you believe that person? Would you believe anyone that would tell you that the most spectacular part of that experiment with the spoon, which is the drawing force, should be discarded? I think you would. What makes me say that? It is because you already have believed it before. This is a book about the human brain, but the details are a little bit too small, so I will draw you my point. The first system to ever be created when you became a fetus was made of a heart and a brain. The heart provides circulation, and it could remind us of the water in the spoon experiment. The brain is an amalgamation of lobes, and that could remind us of the shape of the spoon in the experiment. This system is all there is in the beginning, and see what it does. The heart pumps blood to the brain. Of course, that's the only place to go. And inside the brain there are ventricles where the blood is transformed into cerebral spinal fluid. With the help of the heart pressure, the cerebral spinal fluid is pumped right over the curves of all the lobes inside our brain. Just like that. Just like that. Scientists tell us that the main function of the cerebral spinal fluid is to protect the brain. I don't believe it. I don't believe it more than I would believe anyone telling me that in the experiment the water protects the spoon. See my point? This is Mr. Smiley Face. For a brain, he has a single lobe made out of a spoon. And there are two little pieces of thread attached to the corner of its mouth. I will turn the water on and we'll see what happens. A drawing force, that is the source of the speed and trajectory of the movement it produces. See that the drawing force ends up being the destination of the speed and trajectory of the corners of the mouth, exactly like the trajectory of the reflections in the water at our eyes for destination. Scientists tell us that the cerebral spinal fluid protects the brain. I used to believe it too, but now I believe that the movement of the cerebral spinal fluid over the lobes of the brain produces a drawing force. The understanding of that drawing force is crucial for the understanding of the visual system, but we will come back to that later. Now I will take you back to a few things I said in the previous clips. In the third clip, I said that if the fundamental forces of the universe are related to magnetism, which is a drawing force, sending forces may be unnecessary. In the second clip, I told you that speed and trajectory always had the same source and that they were inseparable. But to prove my point, I used a throwing motion that sent the ball away. So here, there may seem to be a contradiction, but I will use 4 elements of the throwing motion that will all confirm the drawing force as shown by Mr. Smiley Face. The first thing I have to do is is to close my fingers on the ball. The second thing I have to do is to flex my arm. The third thing I have to do is to extend my arm. And finally, I have to release the ball. If all those actions were managed by a drawing force, their destination would be the drawing force itself. To close my fingers on the ball, the distal extremity of the tendons of my finger on the palm side are drawn downward, which is on its way to this. To close my arm, the distal extremity of the tendons of my bicep have to be drawn this way. To extend my arm, the distal extremity of the tendons of my tricep has to move this way. And to release the ball, the distal extremity of the tendons of my fingers on the back side of my hand are drawn this way.
Speed of ball!
So you see that even if the throw has a sending consequence, it had 4 drawing actions as its source. The trajectories of all the movements of all the tendons had my brain as their destination. This is the exact same pattern as the one we saw with Mr. Smiley Face, and it is the same pattern as we saw with the reflections in the water. Biomechanically, the brain is always the destination of everything that happens, as if a drawing force was in presence. But this is not what we hear. We hear that the brain sends messages to our muscles telling them to contract, and we hear that our nerve endings send messages to our brain to tell it what's going on. You see what I mean? On one end, we believe that biomechanically it is all about sending, and on the other, we believe that all the forces of nature relate to a drawing force, magnetism. No wonder we're so confused. Now I think we're ready to move on to the visual system. We will look at it to see if there could be other drawing forces involved in the system. Drawing forces that would be similar to the experiment with the spoon, where there would be the movement of fluids passing over the convexities of curves. That's a rough view of the visual system. Eyeball, retina, optic nerve, and the lobe of the visual cortex. We already took care of the movement of the cerebral spinal fluid around the curve of the lobe of the visual cortex. Now we'll move on to the retina, in which there is the movement of blood in miles of capillaries. Inside of the retina, there are millions of rods and cones, and each of them has a nucleus around which there's still the blood flow in capillaries going on. I wonder if anybody believes that the blood flow inside the retina is there to protect the eyeball. In the visual system, 3 times can we see the combination of a fluid passing over the convexity of a curve. But those 3 times happened at different levels of scale. So I took a piece of sheet metal and I'm going to give it different curves, and I'm going to put them at different levels in the stream, whereas at the top it's slower than at the bottom, and we'll see what kinds of forces emanate from those different curves at different levels in the sink. This large curve will represent the lobe of the visual cortex, and the water, the slow stream, will represent the speed of the movement of the cerebral spinal fluid. Now I'm going to give it more curve, and this curve will represent the shape of the retina, and I will touch the stream in the middle to represent a faster blood flow, the one that would happen in the capillaries. And finally, the tightest curve of all will represent the shape of the nuclei of the rods and cones inside the retina, and the blood flow again will be the movement of the blood in capillaries. So as you can see, there are three possibilities of drawing forces for sight. 1, 2, and 3. The speed of light looks more and more like a myth. It looks more and more like it is a speed of visual perception, able to draw pictures towards consciousness at the speed of visual perception, operated by 3 layers of drawing forces. Think about that and begin to see drawing forces every time you look at someone's head. Next time, we will take care of a constant.
I think I know how it works. I think the wind protects the sail.